There are four hacks that you can use in your LLC to get access to more credit. Now, full transparency, these are the exact strategies that we've used to deploy into our clients' businesses, whether they are complete startups, aka starting their LLCs from scratch, or they are established business owners. And so, the first hack that you can deploy into your business to get access to more capital is looking at the business address. This is one of the what I call one of the most least utilized ways of getting access to capital, but yields such a high return. Here's how this works out. We had a client that when they first started working with us, their LLC had been established for 4 years. Up to this point, they had been running everything essentially what I call like the traditional way, which is they had been using their own cash reserves. So when a project came in and paid them out, they were using that cash from each project to fund the next deal. They were using personal credit cards, which is a big no-no, especially if and when you get audited, which is only a matter of time for most small business owners, especially when you have an LLC, you're more likely to get audited versus that of somebody who maybe has an S corp. The reason why that gets dangerous is because if you have, let's say, an audit that comes through and you've been using your personal credit cards to fund your deals, you've been using your personal credit cards to maybe purchase inventory, to purchase supplies, that's known as commingling. The IRS doesn't like to see that. In fact, that can also pierce the corporate veil if, God forbid, you ended up in a lawsuit. That pierces the corporate veil, meaning the LLC ceases to be effective. And now the person or the entity or the company that's suing you, they go right through the business and they can come after your personal funds. So the way that we utilize the business address and the way that that kind of like coalesces and comes together to strengthen an LLC is we'll take a look at, okay, is this business either a virtual office address that we can use? And if you have no idea what a virtual office address is, TLDR, too long didn't read. This is when you purchase an address from a physical location, maybe in your town, downtown, or anywhere downtown, essentially, or just in your area demographically. Now, the caveat to this is that that virtual office address, it has to be a place that you can receive mail to. And then the second caveat to it, it has to be a physical location where if you were going to maybe that location, you're able to work out of. So it can't be a USPS store. It can't be a shipping location. It can't be some type of private mailbox. It can't be the back of a meat market somewhere. It has to be a physical location that if the banker or if a financial institution were to look it up, then guess what? It's a physical location. So we'll take a look at, okay, are we either A, going to use some type of virtual office address if it makes sense for this business and this line of work? Second thing that we look at is, can we maybe use the physical location, so the brick and mortar address that they plan on using or that you plan on using, should that maybe be used because it's a better look for this type of work? Or thirdly, is it a home-based business, which we work with quite often? I know a lot of people say, well, it has to be a brick and mortar location or it has to be a virtual office address. You can still have a home-based business address and still get access to business capital. We use it all the time. Now, the only thing that I would suggest is if you're somebody that's a bit more reserved, or if maybe you don't want all of your information being out there, because let's be real, once you form your entity, it is public information. So that would be like the one caveat that I would say, that if you are using a home-based business address and someone does a reverse search on your LLC, that is public information. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're setting everything up. But that's the first lever that we look at is, can we use, or what type of address can we use for this business that's going to give us the highest yield of return? The second lever that we pull on, again, a combination of all of these or just one of these avenues, is going to be the business name. It's not just about picking a name that you think sounds good. And it's not just about picking a name that you feel is like, hey, I saw it in a dream, so this is what I'm gonna put out. Look, I'm with it. I'm all for branding. Like, we do it all the time. But if your goal is to get access to high limit capital, then you have to pick a name that is not getting screened by the banks as something that's considered high risk. Now, there's a whole list of names that you'd want to avoid, especially if you are, again, getting screened by a financial institution to get access to business credit. But I'll give you like 4 things that you want to avoid whenever you're selecting a name for your entity. The first thing that you want to avoid is you want to avoid incongruencies. And what I mean by that is, if your business is, let's say, Irvin Friends LLC, but when you go to open up a business bank account, you put on there Irv and Friends Limited Liability Company, like you physically spell it out, that's actually seen as a big mistake with the banks, and you could actually get denied for that. So you want to make sure that as you're setting everything up, it's congruent across the board. Like congruency is one of the biggest factors that you'll hear me talk a lot about on this channel because it plays such a big role with making sure that data is lined up. The second piece to making sure that the name is completely dialed in is avoiding things like banks, putting banks on your LLC name. So Irv Banks LLC, Irv Banking LLC, Irv Credit Repair LLC, Irv Loves Money LLC, anything that has to do with maybe somebody selling some type of stocks or some type of financial institution, or maybe like you're imposing yourself as your own bank, or even crypto with how political it's gotten. Believe it or not, using the word crypto inside of a business name is getting businesses denied left and right, regardless of how profitable the business is, regardless of how long the business owner has been around, regardless of how good of a work they do. Now, if you're thinking, Irv, I don't do crypto, I'm more on the real estate front. Staying away from things like Irv Flips Homes LLC or Irv Flips Houses LLC or Irv Buys Houses Cash LLC. Those right there, you're either A, going to get denied for credit altogether, or B, you're going to get approved for just week low limits that wasn't even worth applying for to begin with. The third thing that you want to avoid when it comes to names is just doing a quick reverse search and just aligning yourself, ensuring that, hey, this person in my town, or hey, somebody else hasn't already trademarked this name. Because there's nothing worse that if a bank pulls both names up, you have your business LLC, and then you have competitor business or someone else that you've never met across the country LLC, and they've had it longer than you have. Well, guess what? You're going to either have to change your name altogether, which means you have to start the process all over again, or B, you may get sued for copyright infringement if somebody wanted to get that aggressive. Now, again, this isn't like a course on legalities, but what I will say is just easier to double check, make sure no one has a name. You can do a reverse search right on GoDaddy. You can do a reverse search right on Busy, a reverse search on pretty much any place where you're going to be purchasing a business entity name. And then just make sure that it's not taken, kind of like a slogan or like a saying that you have. Just make sure that it's not trademarked so that you can actually use it. I'll give you like a pro tip here. This also makes branding and putting yourself out there on the internet and just on the web pages a heck of a lot easier, especially when you're building out and you're getting momentum, through clientele, when you're getting momentum through just how people know you. You just want to have everything dialed in, and you don't want to leave any breadcrumbs that eventually ends up building a loaf against you. So having that dialed in, and then the fourth and final piece when it comes to having the naming convention dialed in is you can keep it broad. And here's what I mean by that. I don't recommend when our clients say, well, Irv, I can just put consulting on here, right? Because that's broad. Yes and no. If you don't actually do the work of consulting, then I don't recommend putting consulting on your entity. Banks are starting to catch on to that anyway. So that's like old news. And that's also line on an application. So I never recommend, like, we want to build out a funding setup, which is what we do with our clients, that's sustainable and that's also predictable when we get access to capital at every level. And one of the ways that we do that is by making sure that, again, here's that big word, congruency, that the name is congruent. And so what I say is, hey, you can use your initials. So if I'm using my initials, my first name Irvin, last name Pena, I may be using IP Enterprise, or I'm using IP and Friends LLC, IP Playbook. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't always have to attach that, like those little pieces at the end of it. But it does help if you wanted to spruce it up quite a bit, because you could always attach a DBA on it. But remember, the main driver behind it is not the DBA. The main driver behind it is the actual entity name, which is what we're always coaching our clients on when we're helping them through the naming selection process. The third hack that I always like to dive into with our clients is foreign entities, but not the way that you're maybe thinking about it, which is just opening up a bunch of foreign entities in random states just to have them. Here's what I mean by that. When you have a foreign entity, you now have the ability of doing business somewhere else. But we only want to do this if it actually makes sense for the business, because if not, you end up creating what's called a nexus, which means you've now created a taxable event against you, the business and the business owner. So who the hell wants to get paid double tax? That's awful. And so we're essentially doing a foreign entity, if it makes sense, in an area where maybe, hey, we already are planning on doing business maybe in the States, or we are already selling homes in the state, or we're already maybe holding properties, or maybe we're planning on extending our demographic and our territory for who we want to service. So we're moving from, let's say, Texas, and we have a heck of a lot of clients in New Mexico, or we're going from Texas and we have, we're in Vegas, maybe in Nevada, and we have a lot of clients in California. So now it makes sense for us to open up a foreign entity. Here's what that does for you, the business owner. You now essentially have created two different oceans that you can pull from, or in this case, fish from, to get access to more capital. Because now you're not just limited to the financial institutions that only service maybe Nevada businesses, but now you also have a essentially a pool that, or a section that you can pull from, that also services California, because now you're able to do business in both states. But remember, you only want to do this if it actually makes sense for your business, because you could open yourself up to getting double taxed or having to pay double fees that you shouldn't be paying for anyways. So use this responsibly. The second thing that I want to say on the, not just virtual office addresses, but when you're creating a foreign entity, is you now have two different virtual offices that you can set. You have one for the state that you've maybe opened up for. So in this case, we're going to use the example California. And then you have your home state of Nevada. That's maybe where the business was originally established. Depends on the bank that you're using. And this is something that we work our clients through, is you're able to use the age from where the entity was originally established, and you're able to almost like warp, and you're able to speed up the time frame that you get access to capital in that new state, if you can provide proper documentation that you've been doing business for, let's say, 4 years inside of Nevada. You're profitable, the whole nine yard. We do that all the time with clients, and it's like one of the fastest ways that they're now able to get access to capital in Cali. And they're not, for the purpose of this example, right? They're able to get access to capital in Cali, and they're also able to get access to capital in Nevada. And it doesn't just have to be either of those two states. I just included those because those were just top of mind, some states that we're seeing with our clients. Now, really quickly, if you are finding value in this style of content and you want a team to help you put together a predictable and sustainable way of getting access to capital, we have something called a simple funding setup that we install into our clients' businesses. And it does just that. It allows them to get access to business capital as they continue to scale their operations. So if you want access to that, go ahead and book a call down below. Now, the fourth and final hack that we're always looking at, especially if it's an existing business, because this is usually one of the dials that's just out of place, is the business classification. And so there's essentially one of two things that we'll do with a business. We'll either completely reclassify the business and like reposition it. So that means like we're gutting it because it was just done incorrectly from scratch. And that's usually easier, or easily done with a business that maybe doesn't have any capital just yet, doesn't have any employees, hasn't maybe been established, like they pretty much starting from scratch. Yes, it's like on paper, it's like 2 years old, but it's just like on paper age. It's not real business age. We'll go in, we'll reclassify it, we'll put it in a brand spanking new industry that's actually congruent for this business, and that makes sense for the funding in the future, not just where the business is now. Or the second thing that we'll do, if it's maybe a business, got the balloons going off, check that out. Or if it's a business that's been already established for some time, has some revenue, often we'll do this with like a 7-figure business, if I'm being honest with you, or at least deep 6 figures, is we'll reclassify the business. There's still repositioning aspect to it, but it's not a complete gut. Here's why. You don't want to like restart the clock, and you don't just want to say, hey, we're going to open up a brand new LLC or a brand new corporation just because the current one that we have is screwed up. You can still salvage that LLC and that business as a whole. It just has to be essentially rebranded. And so one of the things that I usually recommend clients, and I'm going to recommend for you, is take a look at the classification code of the business. It's a 6-digit code. If you have an LLC that you file taxes for, it's found in the top right-hand corner of your Schedule C, which is the 6-digit code. So if I'm using the example of consulting, off the top of my head, there's different ones, but a popular one is 541611. That's business management and consulting, just like across the business sector. That's obviously going to be different for you if you're in real estate. If you're in real estate property management, it's going to be different for you if you're a real estate property appraiser. It's going to be different for you if you are a real estate leasing office. It's still inside of real estate, but there's different subsectors of real estate, of the line of work that you do. Same thing with construction. You'll have residential construction. That's one NAICS code, which is an industry classification. You'll have commercial construction. It's still within construction, but it's a different subsector of construction. You'll have roofing and flooring. It's still in construction, but it's different subsectors of consulting or of construction. So what I recommend doing is looking at the classification of the business and looking at 4 areas. You want to look at how the bank has you classified if you already have business bank accounts. You want to look at how your state has you classified. So you can easily find that right on your state's website. So if I'm in Florida, I'm looking at sunbiz.org. You want to take a look at how the business credit bureaus have you classified. A little pro tip here, even if you don't have business credit just yet, spoiler alert, they're already classifying you. And then the fourth and final place that you want to look at how they have you classified is any business licenses. Sometimes business licensing, especially like in your city, in your state, municipalities, they're going to already have you classified a certain way. And so again, you just want to ensure that it's all congruent and it's all dialed in across the board and they all have you listed the exact same way. So those are 4 different little hacks, little places that we look at that give us a huge return whenever we are getting access to business capital. And you'd be surprised, more often than not, the majority of the business owners that we take on to help them get access to capital aren't getting denied because they have low credit. They aren't getting denied because they don't know what they're doing. They're not profitable. They're getting denied because of little minor details like this. If you found value in this video today, consider sharing it with another small business owner who you know is looking to get access to business capital so that they can continue to scale their business. And if you want to learn more about how we can possibly help you install a simple funding setup directly into your business that allows you to get access to capital on rinse and repeat mode, then go ahead, book a call down below. See you on the other side. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.